Welcome everybody to Clearwater Jazz Holidays, Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. We are recording these sessions for the purposes of Clearwater Jazz Holiday Education and Outreach, and we have Frank Williams and Tyler Wertman with us today, continuing their trombone series with a topic on scale mode applications. Thank you for joining us. All the participants are muted for the courtesy of the session, but if you have questions, please use the chat feature or the raise your hand feature, and we will get those questions to Frank and Tyler. All of the upcoming virtual sessions are up at clearwaterjazz.com's education and outreach page. If you have feedback regarding any of these sessions, or if you'd like us to cover a specific session, please email us at info@clearwaterjazz.com. Frank Williams and Tyler Wertman are special to our Clearwater Jazz Holiday community. Both are actively involved in our education and outreach programs throughout the year. Not only is Frank Williams the director of the jazz program at Ruth Eckerd Hall, which we have supported for years, but he is also instrumental in the development and delivery of many of Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation year-round programming. Frank is an educator with over 40 years teaching experience as a band director, conductor, adjudicator, clinician, composer, and author. Although he is a multi-instrumentalist, his primary instrument and love is the trombone. Check out Frank's book called Chops, The Ultimate Guide to Building Tone, Technique, and Flexibility, which is available for trumpet and trombone. Tyler Wertman is very active with our year-round programming. He's a jazz trombonist as well, and a graduate from FSU and USF with a study focus on jazz performance. He is a composer, performer, producer focused on jazz and classical styles, and performs with many groups and ensembles. Frank and Tyler, we are so happy to have you both back with us. The stage is all yours.
All righty.
Hey Frank, how you doing?
Oh man, I'm all right. I'm all right. You know the one we're not going to start talking about? We're not going to start talking about the blues scale.
Okay.
We're not going to start with that one because everybody does. And unfortunately, for most kids, they never get past it.
Sure.
And you even hear them trying to play it on, on ballads and major chords. And, how shall I say, for a lot of kids, jazz begins and ends with the blues scale. So we're going to end with it maybe, but we're definitely not going to begin with it because I don't want to.
That's great. I love it.
I want to start with, Tyler?
What do you want to start with?
The major scale and the major chord.
Perfect. Exactly.
That's what I want to start with. It's what we first learned, right?
Right.
And I always say there's two kinds of chords, really. There's a major chord for the happy people. There's a minor chord for the sad people. So we'll start with the happy people music, which is major chords. What do you do with a major chord? Well, let us see, said the blind man. Oh, yeah, I do have a sense of humor. Perhaps we could play. Guess what?
What?
You ever thought about using the major scale on a major chord?
That make a lot of sense.
It makes too much sense. So why don't people do it? The young ones, they try to put a blues scale on top of that thing. You go, what are you doing? You've been playing the major scales from the beginning. Why not? And there is the issue. And the problem is they don't play it enough in the improvisational way that allows them to hear the kinds of licks they think are hip. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that becomes the real issue, I think, for them. Of course, there are some do's and don'ts. And you can start with almost any note in a major scale on top of a major chord, except the fourth. The fourth generally doesn't work very well. unless you're like JJ, he would do that. He saw a B flat and rotated to the A on the F major chord, and then finally he resolved it to the F. You know what I mean? That's JJ, and it takes a lot of skill, and he would set that up really well. But in general, you don't want to start on the 4. Okay, you can start on the 2 or the 3 or the 5, maybe even the 6. You know, but 7 for sure. Pretty note, the major 7. You know, but yeah, stay away from that 4. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And also with the blues scale, we don't have that major 3rd and major 7th that you were just talking about.
Yeah, that's why you don't work so on a major chord, I'd imagine. Strange, but they try anyway. All right, so let's move on. There's another one that is very commonly used on the major chord, which is, I believe, the Lydian. Have you ever used the Lydian?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and for the people that are trying to figure it out, let me just say this. You know that note that you don't use, that 4, right?
Right.
Raise it a half step. Raise 4, that's it. So a C major would be C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B natural, C. Got it? And that works. Just creates the half step magnetism between the 4 and the 5, rather than between the 3 and the 4. And that does work pretty well, and you get accustomed to the sound. But I have used it quite effectively, and I have been able to go from major scales to Lydian mode quite effectively in a single tune, single phrase even, that had a series of major chords. Any more ideas on those two?
Sure, no, absolutely. Now you said Lydian. Okay, now let's just backtrack. We talked about major scales and a major chord. Now, unlike, well, no, I'm going back to what you said. Unlike the blues scale, the major scale can be separated into modes. Now, you said Lydian. Lydian, in fact, is a mode of the major scale.
Yes.
It's the 4th mode.
Yes.
Now, this gives students something else to practice. Not only by practicing their major scale are they understanding major tonality, major key centers, major 3rds, major 7th, by changing that root position note up a 4. Now we're practicing Lydian with the same notes we were just using, as well as Dorian, Phrygian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Green.
Just as a matter of review, right there, we talked about this, I think, in the last session just a little bit. And I think we talked about if you take a single major scale and play it, you've actually played all of the church modes as well. And some of those modes are used in jazz more than they're used in church anymore. And most of those modes that are used in church are used only in the Catholic Church, maybe in the Lutheran Church a little bit. But, you know, definitely not in those Protestant churches. They don't use those modes. They use the blues scale. But seriously, you know, if you take a major scale from 1 to 1, that's going to be a major scale. If you start the 2nd note of a major scale and take it up an octave, you're going to get a Dorian mode, and et cetera, and et cetera, and et cetera, et cetera. I always try to give kids 2 ways to do it. So for me, the easiest way to handle that is to simply raise a 4, rather than trying to figure out whether you go 1 to 1, or 2 to 2, or 3 to 3, or 4 to 4. You understand what I'm saying? In that particular situation, since you're only talking about altering 1 note. So remember, kiddies out there, you only talk about altering 1 note in that scale, and that is the 4th note. Is that in line with what you're thinking?
Absolutely.
Or you want to elaborate more on the modal aspect of the major scale?
Well, I just want to go and touch on the sharp 4 element you're talking about here.
Go ahead. Go.
For students that might be looking, you know, where do I play this scale, this Phrygian scale? Oftentimes, well, you might see sharp 4, but you're more likely to see sharp 11 written under the chord nomenclature. So when you see sharp 11, understand that is the same thing as sharp 4.
Yes.
And we can apply these scales in those two areas,
Yes.
whether it's sharp 4 and sharp 11.
Yes, 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 yes. I don't know who I was listening to last night. I know who it was. Craig Handy. Do you know him?
I'm not familiar.
One of my favorite tenor players, and he's a New York cat, but he's a jazz cat. He does jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And I first discovered him when he was with Betty Carter on Dropping Things. That's probably the best album to hear him. And then I happened to be in New Jersey in the 90s, and he was playing with John Hammond, organ player, at a club in Montclair called Trumpets. I got a chance to sit like 4 feet away from him and listen to him play. And he's kind of understated, you know, he's a mild personality, so he doesn't like get all the, he's not real flashy. But man, this cat plays like a ton of music, you know, he's very, very harmonically deep, very melodically deep. I was listening to something the other night he was doing, and thank God I have the kind of ear I have. And I heard him play this tension, man, and went like, oh yeah. And basically he played a flat 5 and then resolved it to the 5.
Oh, I think we lost Frank. Frank, you there?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I had someone try to call through and I didn't catch it over here. Sorry.
I was making sure we didn't lose you.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to put my phone on airplane mode or something to keep that from happening.
He was going flat 5 to the natural 5?
Yeah, and pretty much it just created a real bluesy sound. The flat 5 is one of the blue notes. And when he resolved it to the 5 on top of that minor chord, it actually almost gave it the effect of going from a minor to a major. Do you know what I mean? It kind of brightened up the sound of that minor chord. The way he did that was to start with the flat 5 rather than the regular 5 and then move that up. So I'm saying all that to say this. After you become very comfortable with these scales and modes and you experiment, you can then develop your own language in the use of these and find alternatives to what we are teaching you. The bottom line is very few people are going to have an ear like Frank Williams and sit there and listen to you and go, oh man, he resolved that flat 5 to the 5, baby, that was him. There are very few cats that can hear that, you know, so don't worry about it. Do what you want to do, and it's all about how it sounds and how it feels at the end of the day. It's about how it sounds, how it feels. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. Yeah.
I love it. And if it doesn't feel, well, and you taught me something that just there, and if it doesn't feel right as a player, we shouldn't play it.
Yeah. Which gets to one of the biggest problems with improv, really, is that there are so many people who feel this obligation to play. I gotta play on every beat, in every measure. I gotta play in every beat and every measure. I gotta play on every chord. No, you don't. One of the most successful musicians of all time is Miles Davis. And the one thing that Miles Davis understood was how not to play. Music is sound and silence. And sometimes the silence is more important than the sound. It's more about, in jazz, I think, it's more about when you play than what you play. And sometimes the young players, when you play, it's too much. So you start sounding like goulash. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there, but we can't make out any of it, rather than pacing yourself and having some pauses, some commas, some question marks, some exclamation point, and just take a breath and listen to the rhythm section and maybe have them make a commentary and get something off them. But a lot of times what we do is we'll get lost in a form and we'll feel the necessity to play, and we'll play the exact wrong note because we did not know where we were anyway. It is better to take that moment to groove and look cool and shake your head and listen to the rhythm section and figure out where you are, and then come on the right chord, then force it and play something that would be regrettably not forgettable. People will remember that wrong note, that one wrong note, a whole lot more. They will remember those 100 right notes you just played.
Very true.
Word.
And Frank, I want to talk about something. You talked about when and what you play. Now,
Yeah.
this is something very important for any soloist. In order to understand when you play and what you play, you have to be conscious about your playing. You can't just be up there playing every line you remember, because at the end of that solo, end of that chorus, I guarantee you, if you try to piece that solo together, you're probably going to miss about 80% of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is, listen to your rhythm section, man. It's a team effort. You know, oh, here we go. Now you're going to make me political.
I got them going. Okay.
One of the things that you cannot do in jazz is some of the things that we're doing in our society right now. Me. I don't care about you. I care about me. I'm not wearing a mask because I'm this color. You're wearing a mask because you're that color. That's not the way jazz works. In order for it to work, everybody has to cooperate, and people feed off each other. Ahmad Jamal had one of the best groups ever, piano, bass, drums, unbelievable arrangements, unbelievable everything. And as quiet as it was, Miles Davis was eminently more successful. But Miles, his whole life, while he was an acoustic player, salivated over having a rhythm section that sounded like Ahmad Jamal's rhythm section. That interplay between the members. That means that you had to have a true democracy where everybody is listening to everybody and there is give and take. And that's not just political, that's about the music, baby. You can't play this music if you think you are the center of attraction, because all the drummers gotta do is play something uncanny, and next thing you know, your time is jacked up. Or the piano player off chord, next time you know, you can't find the chord. Or the bass player decides he's gonna play some substitute bass lines, and next thing you know, you can't figure out what chord you got. So that's where we are. You better understand how this thing works. We check with the majors. Let's go to the, what do we call this thing? The dominant chord. That's like the chord with the flatted seventh. It will be root, third, fifth, and rather than using the seventh from the major scale, you take the seven and you lower the half step. So a C7 would be C, E, G, and B flat. Got it?
Also F major.
Yeah. C, E, G, B flat. Now B natural. And now you got a dominant sound. Why do we call it dominant? Because that is a chord that is created if you build a chord in thirds on the dominant or fifth degree of any scale. If I'm in C and I build a chord in thirds on G, I'll get G, B, D, F natural, not F sharp, because I'm in key of C. And that will give me that dominant seventh chord. So the dominant seventh chord is very important. And guess what scale works on that? The dominant seventh scale. Never heard of it? We call it the Mixolydian mode. Never heard of it? Guess what? It's a major scale with one alteration. Guess what that is? A flatted seventh. That's it. Take the major scale, flat the seventh, and you got it. And that works. And that is probably one of the most popular chords in popular music, is the dominant seventh chord. We all like seventh chords. And of course, in jazz, we make up ninth chord and the 11th and 13th and everything else. But the bottom of the chord is the seventh. You know, I like to say that jazz begins at the 9, and rock and roll can't see that far. I'm sorry, I did it. Rock and roll stops at the 7, jazz begins at the 9. There is the break. There's the connection. You know? Yeah. Any questions out there from any of the audience or spectators or supporters or anything like that?
I don't see any here just yet, Frank. You guys are doing great. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's great.
Frank, I got a quick question. So you talk about, mixolydian mode and dominant, chords. What's a way to actually practice a mixolydian scale so that I can use it in my improvisation?
A million different ways. How do you want to practice it? Practice like you always practice your scales. Up and down 2 octaves with an arpeggio with that flat at 7. Always go to the 9. I'm always go to the 9 and back down. But I'm practicing jazz. If it's a major, it's going to be 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. 7, 5, 3, 1. If it's the dominant, it's going to be 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9, flat 7, 5, 3, 1. And then I'm going to practice a whole lot of patterns. I'm one of the guys, I like threes. I'll go 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Bobbity, 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 down, and back down the same way. I love that pattern. I will sometimes repeat that bottom note, ba 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 da, but then go back to the first note. So you want 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, blah 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 blah, throughout the entire pattern. You get the idea. I play it in thirds. 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5, 4, 6, etc. Right? And then any other thing. And then sometimes what I think that we miss is just try to create some random melodies with it. Because the art of improvisation is recreating the melody. Now, I was just talking to my son last night. He's a bass player. And I interrupted his practice session. He had been going for about 3 hours. And he had another hour. He was doing a 4-hour practice session. You heard it right, trombone players. 4-hour practice session. That's right, 4 hours. I didn't say 4 minutes. I didn't say 40 minutes. I said 4 hours. And my son started playing professionally on this night show when he was 19. And that was 30 years ago. So he's still practicing 4 hours, all right? You need to figure that one out real fast. At any rate, he was working on I Love You, Porgy. Not the tune, not the bass lines, the melody with the bow. And I'm like, he's like, man, how are you going to really improvise on a tune if you don't know the melody? So in jazz, for us horn players, normally, you have to play the head before you can play anything else. But I've been to a lot of jam sessions where cats get up on stage and they will fake the head. They'll act like they're playing and play real soft and try to hide, right? But they can't wait to play a solo. And their solo is usually not a very positive moment because they never even did the basic homework to go learn the tune in the first place. So a lot of time, the melody itself is instructive. I like to look at the melody and look at what notes the composer chose and how he placed them on top of each chord to get some idea of his harmonic, melodic combinations. And then that instructs me as to what might be appropriate just as a testament to this composition as I start my solo. Now, once I get into it, it's going to become mine. But I'm at least going to pay testament to it. And you can only do that when you have done that homework to really learn that melody and learn how that composer chose which harmonic partials she was going to use as melodic notes, and which notes in the melody might have nothing to do with the harmony. And that gives you some hint as to extensions, alterations, passing notes, etc. that might, substitutions that might be appropriate for that tune. So that's also a very big part of this. So I practice, the short answer is I practice for any scale, any mode, the way I practice everything, and that is in every conceivable way it can be practiced. Inside, out, upside down, round, and about, period. And then I found 20 other ways to do it, right? And then I create my own melodies with it, which is very, very important, because it's very hard to get on stage and create melody with something on stage in front of a live audience if you have not first created melody with that same material at home in the privacy of your practice room, so you can share your embarrassment with just 4 walls rather than 400 people. That's my theory.
No, that's great. And that goes back to knowing what you play and when to play.
Yeah, man.
Basing off, the melody, we can see what the composer decided what to play harmonically on top of these chords, and also how much space he or she was using to know when to play, maybe for an opening chorus.
Yeah. And remember, it's a journey, so you don't, show all your tricks in the first chorus. You let it build. You introduce yourself. You have a little conversation. At some point, you kind of make sure everybody knows that you're a bad cat. You can play your horn. And then you have a kind of a gracious exit from the center stage. That's kind of how this thing goes. It's a journey. So far we've done majors and we've done dominant.
Dominant. Yep.
Minor sevenths.
Yeah.
That's my next one. I'm very methodical. I'm sorry.
No,
hey, kitties, how you doing out there? The minor seventh. Oh, what is that? Well, look. For the seventh, we already flatted. Oh, I got a little bit showing up. I already flatted the seventh. For the minor, you have to flat the 3 and the 7. So if you take a major scale and you flat the 3 and the 7, you will come up with what is known as the Dorian mode. Another way to play a Dorian mode is to take any major scale 2 to 2. So if I'm going to play a Dorian mode in C, I'm going to use the key signature of B flat. If I'm going to take a Dorian mode in G, I'm going to use the key signature of F major. If I'm going to take a Dorian mode in A, I'm going to use the key signature of G, or I'm just going to use one sharp. I'm sorry, I just said it, okay? This is what we do. You want to speak of that for a minute? I probably need to move and plug my device in before it dies. How much time do we have, guys?
Hey Frank, we probably have maybe 10 minutes or so,
Yeah.
or
All
as much as you want to go. We don't have another session after you today, so it's at your it's up to you
right.
guys how long.
Cool. Let me move to another place so I can actually plug this thing in before it dies on us, okay?
No problem.
Been a long day. I'm gonna walk and keep my face in it so people can see me. Hello.
And I'll talk about some of these modes.
Yeah.
Now, so we talked about major so far.
Yeah.
We talked about mixolydian and dominant.
Yeah.
Okay. And we talked about Dorian. Okay, which is also minor 7 if we were looking at it as a chord symbol, as well as Lydian, which is sharp 4 or sharp 11.
Yeah.
Now, all of these so far come out of the major scale.
Yes.
And they are modes of the major scale. So it's very important to practice these thirds, as he's saying, these, as many exercises as possible in one major scale, and then evolve that to these 7 other modes to find these other harmonic centers.
Cool. Well, we've got that done, and the same thing, ladies and gentlemen, practice this skill like you practice all others, and then use it like you use all others. Now, I have neglected and sent to the orphanage the blues scale. I'm going to let the blues scale come in for a second. Not I don't like it. I love the blues scale. It is the most magical thing that we probably have. It works in a lot of situations. I want to discuss those right now, but I wanted to deal with these other things first because I don't want to start and end with the blues scale, okay? The blues scale is probably one of the most ingenious musical entities we have because it is applicable in so many different situations. Of course, you can play any blues by just playing a blues scale, any blues. Well, most blues. Some blues are not really strictly blues. They're 12 bar, 16 bar, 32 bar, and then there are all these other blues like Now the Time. And, there's some things out there that maybe, blues for Alice that maybe you can't get away with just a blues scale, Too many chords. They play with it. They call it a blues, but it's a whole lot more in there. But the standard blues, the blues scale works. You're talking 1. You're talking flat 3. You're talking 4. You're talking sharp 4 or flat 5. You're talking 5. You're talking flat 7. And you're talking the octave above tonic. Now, what is important about that is it has a lot of blue notes, which means you play the note on top of the chord, whether it's a dominant chord or a minor 7 chord. They both work. The blues scale works on both. It works on a dominant chord or a minor 7 chord. Yeah, both of them. Okay. The minor third is a blue note. Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. The next blue note is a sharp 4 or flat 5. That's a blue note. Really, really blue. Oh, yeah. The flat 7 is a blue note, too. Those are the essential blue notes that you're going to find in the blues scale. And it works on all blues tunes. But it also works on dominant chords. And it also works on minor 7 chords. So it is a very utility type structure, scale, which a lot of band makers teach. Unfortunately, they don't teach much past that. I'm hoping this session will inspire them to teach them what's past that. But it works in all those situations. And it is something you need to take serious and learn. And of course, you can develop patterns with the blues scale, just like you can develop patterns with all the scales. You can start on the root and play it up to the octave. You can start on the minor third and take it up the octave. You can start on the 4 and take it up the octave. And each one of those, start on the sharp 4, start on the 5, start on the flat 7. You can start anywhere in that scale and take it up the octave, and each one of those will sound different. And but it's going to fit on the same chord. So you need to have those different flavors for that same chord. It's the same scale. You're starting on a different note, so it gives you a different set of intervals, which creates a different sound, a different feel, a different taste on the palate of the ear. Okay? Got it?
Okay. Yeah.
So just want to throw that in there while I could, because I'm not hating on the blues scale. I just want to make sure we deal with a couple of other issues before we get to that.
And I want to talk about something with the blues scale. You talked about how you could play it over the minor and also major chord. Now that works because chord. Right, minor or major, right?
Yeah. Right.
Now that works because we have this flat 3, which is a blue note. Also the third of a minor chord. Also, the blue notes, like Frank was just saying, work over major. So the flat 3, the sharp 4, or flat 5, and flat 7 can be used to evoke this blues sound over major chords. But if we're playing a major chord, we want to be approaching it with the understanding that the third is major. Okay. This flat 3 can actually be seen as a sharp 9 in major. So there's a whole bunch of different ways, like Frank is saying, to practice it and to go about playing it as well.
Cool. Disclaimer. You can superimpose a minor third on top of a major scale. You may not superimpose a major third on top of a minor chord. Disclaimer, it's okay to put that minor third on top of the major chord. It is not okay to put the major third on top of the minor chord. Okay, got it?
You'll hear it as soon as you play it, and it won't feel good.
Yeah. So, as a matter of fact, people will be laughing at you before you get out your horn. So, that's the other thing you got to be careful of. People will be laughing at you before you get out of your horn. I'm sorry, I'm being mean now. There's some other things we could talk about, some more advanced stuff. I just want to kind of get kids going, and if I can get them going just into the things we talk about, that's quite a lot. The bebop scale, which is a kind of adaptation of the Mixolydian mode. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So bebop scale is a scale in which we're going to use both sevenths. Pretty much is all it is. We use on the descent the tonic and the major seven and the dominant seventh going down to the 6 to the 3 to the blah 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 blah. Okay, and that's going to have the dominant seventh and the flattest seventh. Okay, so you might want to do some research on that bebop scale. Check it out. A lot of guys will play up Mixolydian and down bebop scale. Up Mixolydian, down bebop scale. It's almost like playing the harmonic minor, where it goes up one way and come down another. So you might want to check that out as well. So we're getting close, I guess. Can we recap a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So
go ahead, you do it, please.
Well, the first thing we started talking about was not the blues scale, right? It was major scale and the major modes found with it. Now then we talked about Lydian, which is the 4th mode of major. From there, we approached Mixolydian, our dominant mode, which is the 5th mode. Then we spoke about Dorian minor, which is our 2nd mode of major.
Okay, you all got all that? I'm going to say it another way. You ready? Major scale. Okay. Lydian, raise 4. Mixolydian, flat 7. Dorian, flat 3, flat 7. Got it? Okay. And that's over major scale, of course. And then we talked about the wonderful blues scale. 1, flat 3, 4, sharp 4, 5. You can also call the sharp 4 a flat 5, 5, flat 7, tonic. Most people I know, when you're going up the scale, they call it the sharp 4. Coming down the scale, they call it the flat 5. But that's a matter of academics. Who cares? It's sound the same way, so the way it sounds, the way it sounds. What you call it. That's your concern. The way it sounds is everybody's concern. Got it? Okay. Then we dealt with the bebop scale, right?
Yep, very true.
Have we missed anything? We did not deal with the augmented chord, which is simply raise the. Okay, and you can do that by taking any of them. If it says a sharp 5, even if it's a major scale or a dominant scale, just raise the 5. That's all, no big deal. And if it says diminished, just lower the 5. That's all. From any other form, and you got it.
Now, I just want to add, this practice can be taken into other scales as well. In jazz, we use the melodic minor scale for soloing a lot. Now, I'll just hit a couple different modes. You know, Lydian augmented is the third mode, yeah, as well as our first mode. I mean, melodic minor is used in jazz tremendously. We also have fourth, which is Lydian dominant. So this implies sharp 4 or flat 5, as well as flat 7 that you're talking about. Now, this can be played over major chords as well. Now, this comes from the melodic minor scale. Okay, so with all the practicing that can be done with major, the same can be done with every other mode. Almost every other mode, should I say.
And scale, because the minor thing is a little different. The central mode for minor is Aeolian.
Yep.
And Dorian is the one that we have gravitated to mostly in jazz. But then you have the harmonic version of the minor and you have the melodic versions. And once again, as a matter of review, the harmonic version is the minor scale, Aeolian mode, with a raised 7. And the melodic, of course, has only the major third going up in that first chord, and then they are lowered on the descent. The 7 is lowered as well on the descent. So that's kind of like what you have there, okay? All right. You have a major tetrachord and a minor tetrachord going up, and 2 minor tetrachords coming down on the melodic minor scale. That's for y'all. By the way, tetrachord is a 4-note scale. Sorry.
No. Now, so the 7th mode of melodic minor is one we use quite a bit. Can you tell us what that is?
You want to talk about Locrian?
The superlocrian mode.
Go ahead. You call it the superlocrian. Ooh, I just call it the Locrian. I never saw the S on his shirt, so I just saw the Locrian. Do you have an S on his shirt? I never saw that S. I missed it. Must be my bad eyesight.
Well, so superlocrian, okay, comes from melodic minor and is the 7th scale degree, okay? That's what we start. That's okay. So in C melodic minor, okay, with the same notes, we approach it with B as the starting note. We get our B superlocrian scale, which sounds like this. So with superlocrian, that also has 2 other names for the exact same scale. Okay, diminished whole tone is our second. You might have heard of this, and this actually explains the scale very well. The first 4 notes come from our half whole diminished scale, and the ending half is all whole tone. So diminished whole tone fits perfectly. Superlocrian, it sounds like a superhero from a comic book. Okay, so there's many names.
Oh, the S.
And there's many names, as well as altered. Okay, you might hear this term altered scale. In jazz or in classical music, this is the same scale here. Superlocrian, diminished whole tone, altered are all the same scale, and that derives from the 7th mode of melodic minor. Now, this mode is really interesting, and you can apply it to a lot of the dominant function because we cover a lot of the same notes a dominant chord will cover, such as a major third and a flat 7th. We also have notes here that sort of color the dominant chord in a way where playing a Mixolydian scale might not cover. So we have notes such as the flat 9, the sharp 9, as well as sharp 11 and flat 13.
So I have a question for you. If I'm doing a G7 chord, right? What is the superlocrian mode you're going to use? What note to start on?
A flat melodic minor is the scale that I would be using for G7.
Got it.
Because if you start on that major 7 of A flat melodic minor, that is G.
Got it.
And we build our scale accordingly.
Got it. Got it. I just want them to be clear about how you applied that, because you started talking about scales in the major third and this, and probably some people going, no, it's not. It's a major. What is he talking about? I wanted to make sure that you paired the scale with the chord, so they understood that the scale might have one name, the chord has another, and there's a half step differential between the two. Do you know what I mean?
That's very
Otherwise, we'd have some people who are playing things that are all a half step away from what it should be. And that would sound too much like Charles Ives for my
interesting. Too out there.
taste. Exactly. This has been fun, man.
I really enjoyed this.
We covered a lot of stuff, you know? A lot of stuff in a short period of time.
Practice too. So.
Yeah. And we had some fun too. I want to get a shirt with an S on it so I can be the super loquier mode. I want to be that person.
And on the back, you need all the alterations: sharp 11, flat 9, flat, sharp 9.
Yeah. Perhaps I'll put them in some impolite language. The whatever flat 9 or whatever this and that. We're given some descriptive language as well to help with us.
That might be what people know it best as. So.
Yes, I'm sure they do, because I've heard musicians talk about these things, and for some reason, they always add some adjective or something there in order to help,
Colorful. Colorful
flavor.
Language.
Yes, exactly. And jazz is a language. I'm glad you said that word. Jazz is a language. You are speaking a language. So make sure you communicate with earthlings. We haven't discovered life outside this planet yet. So all your communications need to be with other earthlings, okay? I've heard people walk on the stage and I was sure that they were playing to someone on Pluto, but we haven't gotten that far. So please don't do that. We need to communicate with earthlings, okay?
Please.
All right. Cool, man. Steve.
All right. Yeah, so thank you both. This was great. You guys are going to be back with us on July 13th, and the topic for that session is approaching a transcription. So we look forward to having you both with us. We've got James Suggs with us this Wednesday on mute technique, and then our good friend Kyle Schroeder is going to be joining us on Wednesday with a topic called Aiming for a University Jazz Program, Tips from a College Student, Things to Consider and What to Expect. We love Kyle, and we're looking forward to welcoming him to our Young Lions Jazz Master Sessions. And check out clearwaterjazz.com for all these upcoming sessions. We've got so many great musicians. Next week we've got Austin Vickery back with us, and the list goes on. So thank you, Frank and Tyler, for being part of this. We look forward to your next session, and thank you everybody out there who's watching and supporting Clearwater Jazz Education and Outreach. We hope you're getting a lot out of these programs. Frank and Tyler, we'll see you soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
See you, everybody.
All right, later.